All right, it says it's streaming now to the group. So welcome, welcome. So glad to have those of you that are here, and those of you who are either going to be watching this later. I know there's several people. This was a hot topic, guys. Very hot topic. When I started sharing about forgiveness, there was just a lot of people that either agreed, like, yes, this is so important for inner peace, or that just I think that they need it, right? Well, we all need it, right? We all need it, but it's a hot topic. So I was like, ooh, okay. So I will just briefly introduce myself. Those of you that are here live already know me, but for those of you watching the recording, my name is Heather Nielsen. I run choosingwisdom.org with Cherie, who is also here live. And then I also have My Divine Joy, which is my coaching where I do business coaching. And a big part of it is wealth and wisdom. And wealth and wisdom, it's what it says. It's right. It starts with wisdom and personal development on all those things. And then it also leads to wealth and not just money, but also rich experiences, rich relationships, like wealth in all its forms, because we know that money by itself does not bring happiness. And so wealth and wisdom is my group and my membership. And so I'm excited to have you guys here. But let me talk about why I'm speaking about forgiveness. It actually is because I was asked to speak about forgiveness at our local women's group. And when the person called and asked me, first of all, she was super nervous. And I was like, oh, I had to check the date. And as soon as I knew the date worked, I was like, oh, yeah, that'll work. And then she was like, oh, thank you. I know it's a hard topic. I know it can be really heavy. And I was like, oh, no. My view of forgiveness is that is what makes life better. It frees you, it makes you lighter. So my view of forgiveness is maybe a little different. And if that's not your view, I think it's just because you still need to work on it. But I know that by forgiving, oh my God, well, being forgiven and then also forgiving others. And I think it's really the forgiving others that bring the lightness and really what sets us free. So first, before we get started, because I did tell you guys I'm going to talk about three techniques. But first, when we are sharing experiences, I want to really caution you, and I'm probably saying this because I used to do it and I'm evolving, guys. But sometimes I would hear people talking about what the hard thing was that they were going through. And in my brain, if not out loud, but at least in my brain, I would be like, really? Like, that is no big deal. Do you know what I've been through? And it's almost like we want to compare, like, oh, I've been through a worse thing than you. That is horrible because you know what? Sometimes I have a bad day and it's not even that big of a deal. I know I'm blowing it out of proportion, and yet it still makes my day hard. And there's also things that I've been through that have been really hard. But then I look at other people and I'm like, man, but at least I didn't have that. So this like hard, we're not judging everyone's hard and what they're dealing with. We're just going with it, that we're all on a journey, we're all evolving. And gratefully, like I think back about when I was in high school and had my heart broken. That was really hard as a teenager. Oh my gosh, it was hard, but it really was nothing compared to going through a divorce. And yet it was still hard at the time. And so thank goodness I didn't have to go through that as a teenager. That may have just actually broken me. So whatever it is, whatever we're going through, um, we can still work on forgiveness. So first of all, I think we all know, we've probably all heard that forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. There's several quotes about holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting it to hurt the other person. Or there is a great quote. Let me actually pull it up because I actually love it. And let me just find it real quick. This is by Jonathan Lockwood Hugh. Forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. And I could just like shout that from the rooftops because to me, that is really the key about why forgiving is so important. It is for us. So I know a lot of people that follow me are believers, and we know that forgiveness comes through Christ, and it's through Him that we are forgiven. I also know that it is through Him that's what lets me let go. It's because of Him that can be. I don't even want to say necessarily forgotten, because sometimes you still remember the hard thing you went through, or what the person did that hurt you. Sometimes you really do forget it, but sometimes you remember it, but it doesn't sting. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't feel like that twisting of the knife. It doesn't feel like your heart's being like broken into a million pieces. So I know that that is one of the main things about forgiveness. Now, the techniques I'm going to be sharing, they work whether you are a believer or not. And so these are universal techniques. However, I just always like to mention that because there are so many believers and fellow Christians in my sphere of influence. And so I do, of course, want to bring that up. So when we are talking about forgiveness, a lot of times we know this, right? Like the quotes I shared and talking about it, you know it in your head. You're like, yeah, I know I should forgive. I know I'll feel better. I know whatever. But, and like we still replay these things in our head over and over and over again. And that just brings us down. And it's not good. So even though we know these techniques are going to move the knowledge about forgiveness from our head into our heart. And that's where it really matters. So let me go ahead and share my screen if I can figure out which screen to share. Let's see this one. Okay. So this, oh, now if you got the email from me, and some of you, I don't know if you got the email or not. So you know what, before I do this, let me stop sharing. I'm going to share where you can get this real quick because I did email it out. But for those of you who are here and you might want to follow along, let me drop this into the chat first. So this is a PDF handout that was included. So if you are already on the Wealth and Wisdom or just really any of the My Divine Joy things that I do, you should have gotten an email 30 minutes before that was like the 30-minute email, plus it had a link to this PDF. But if you didn't, I just sent it there in the chat. And now I will share my screen so that we can look at it together. Okay, so when you look at this, let me move the chat over here now so I can see, and I actually will make it even a tad, well, I will attempt to make it a tad bigger. Let's see. Okay, so you guys feel free to tell me if you can you see all of this first? What is this? This first one about write and destroy. Can anyone give me a thumbs up? Okay, yes, I'm seeing it. You guys can see it. Okay, so this is technique number 1, which is write and destroy. And it's about journaling to remove these negative emotions. So I'm going to tell you how to do it. And then I'm going to give you an example and tell you a story, right? Because it's always stories that make it like real. So what you need to do to get started, you need to have a pen or pencil, whatever you prefer to write with, and a notepad. And then a timer, whether it's like on your microwave or on your phone or whatever, but a timer, and set it for 7 minutes. And then you start with this journal prompt. I feel, and then put the negative emotion. Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? Is it embarrassment? Is it shame? Is it whatever the negative emotion is, right? Because, and then you write, and you just write and write and write all while that timer is counting down. Now, if you get to kind of the end and you're like, or you're still writing and you're like, oh, I'm ready, I still have a few more minutes, then write, I feel, and write another negative emotion and write that down and write and write and write until the timer goes off. Now, when the timer goes off, you are going to destroy the paper. Now, because of where I live, I can't usually go out and burn things. It would cause people would notice because when you live in a desert and your husband is on the fire department, people would be like, why is the firefighter's wife outside burning things in this drought? So I usually rip it up into little tiny pieces because I don't want anyone to pick up the piece of paper and see their name on it, right? I don't want them to find, because they'll just wonder, and they're probably not going to be like, oh, I'm sure she only wrote wonderful things about me and then threw it away. No, so I rip it so tiny that no one can see, but you can burn it if you are in a safe place where you can. But notice at the bottom, I say, keep it negative. You don't want to destroy the positive. Now, I have done this where I'm, maybe I'm complaining about a child or my spouse or something. And then I start feeling bad because here I am like complaining about them and, mentioning all the horrible things they do. And then I start feeling like, oh, but I know they're doing their best and I know they're really trying. The other day they did this for me, so sometimes I'm like tempted in my brain to start writing the positive sound. That is not what this is about. This is about getting all the negatives out of you. And you can see on the side there where it says up, out, and away. So you are getting everything up out of your body that you possibly can in 7 minutes and getting it out of your heart and getting it onto the paper, out onto the paper. And then you're getting it away by destroying it, by whether it's burning, ripping it up into little pieces, or whatever you do to really destroy that energy and get that out of you. Now, here's the story. This was probably 2 years ago, something like that. My husband and I were not seeing eye to eye about one of our children. He was very upset about something, and frankly, I just didn't think it was that big of a deal. I kind of thought it was, anyway, I don't even remember what it was, to be honest, but I remember the situation because it was the perfect example of this technique. So after we had been talking like several nights, like we talk about it and then kind of let it die, and then it would come back up again. And finally I said, oh, and we were just going in circles, right? Like we were not seeing eye to eye. So we were not coming to an agreement. We weren't coming up with an action plan, whatever it was. And so I was like, I think you need to journal about this. You need to write and destroy. And he's like, you're probably right, but I don't think it'll work. You know, like he was just like upset and didn't want to hear any of my great ideas and didn't really want to be coached by his wife. But a couple days passed, and I remember it was a Monday night that things, this topic came up again. And we were able to have like an actual conversation about it because he had done this. And I brought it up. I was like, hey, did you journal about that? He's like, yeah, actually I did. And I was like, yeah, I can tell. Because now we can talk about it in like a logical, like a problem solving session rather than just him ranting about this child that he was so upset about. And so I know this works. And now, that's just one that really stands out to me. I have done this a lot of times. Now, if 7 minutes is not long enough, feel free to do another session, but don't feel like you need to do this for hours and hours, or maybe do it every day or every other day or something, because it's not like one of these sessions is going to solve all the problems in the world, but it can solve one problem, or and it can take it down a degree, take it down a notch. It can just kind of relieve those really pent up feelings so that you can start, I don't know, it just takes the sting out of them, guys. It just really does. And so whether you have to do this one time or multiple times, it really helps. And you can do it over many different topics, whether it's just one person offended you a certain time and you're writing about when this certain thing happened, or, childhood wounding is a real thing. And so if you have, even in the best of childhoods, things happen. Sheree was sharing something just the other day about it. So anyway, really, really great technique. So highly recommend that one. Now this next one is tapping. Now, you guys, I am not certified in this. I have not studied this in depth. I have learned from other people, and because I've used it, I know it works. So I'm going to go off screen so that we can go over these tapping points first, and then, sorry, I think I said that backwards. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see me, and we're going to go over the tapping points, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. So these tapping points are acupressure points. So go ahead and tap with me. I know some of you have your what is it? Cameras off. So I can't actually see if you're doing this, but you will get more out of it if you actually try. So first, tapping point is top of the head. So top of the head. Remember, you're doing this with me. Okay, next is the eyebrow, and it's this like kind of that corner right by your nose. So right up there, tap there. Next point is the side of the eye. So I'm moving my glasses so you guys can see, but kind of right on the temple there, right on the side. The next one is under your eye, and you can feel that cheekbone right there. So that's the next one. I'll put my glasses back on. Then under the nose, right there, that little dimple there. Then on your chin. Next is your collarbone. This is the one that is so weird for me, under the arm. Feels a little silly, but there's points under there. And then the last one is karate chop right here on the side of your hand, as if you were doing a karate chop. Now, you guys could do this whether you did it with your right hand or your left hand, the right side of your body, the left side of your body, that doesn't matter. Now, these different points do have different acupuncture points or acupressure points, but I am not even I don't even know them in depth enough to be able to give you advice about that. Actually, Cherie can, who a lot of you guys know because she is my business partner from Choosing Wisdom. But now let me go back. Oh, another person just joined. Feel bad that I didn't see that earlier. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen again. Back to this one. And now that we've gone through the points together, let's talk about how you use this as a technique to release and to work on forgiveness, right? So similar to what we did with the journaling, you're first going to release negative. So you start saying, I release. And just imagine you're letting go of whatever follows. So if you're tapping on your head, you can either just tap there the whole time, or you can tap and then move to the other places. That part doesn't matter. But while you're tapping, you'll say, I release that I'm so angry at my husband. I know anyway, whatever the bad things are. I can't think of something right now. But, I'm going to go with the child because I could manufacture those easier in my brain. Maybe it's because I have 5 of them. But, I'm so mad at my child. They used Sharpies and drew on my wall. And now I am going to have to scrub the wall. Maybe I'm even going to have to repaint it. How could they do this? How could they destroy our house? Whatever, whatever the thing is, that you're upset about. It probably is, you're probably not super triggered. You're probably a little triggered by kids coloring on the wall, but there's way worse things in life than kids coloring on the wall. So anyway, you are just gonna tap, doing all of those, like repeating the negatives again, like before. Keep it negative. I release, and you're just releasing all the negatives, taking all the sting out of those emotions. Then I like to put my hand on my heart, take a deep breath, and just let all of that go. And then you start tapping again, but this time it's tapping in the positives. And so you can say, I love my child. They have so many gifts. I love that they are learning how to express themselves. I know that they are trying to learn new things, whatever the positive things are. And then again, after you've done that, and you can just do this for as long as you want or as short as you want, then you can place your hands on your heart and take several deep breaths, and just breathing deeply grounds you too. But so you're like, first you're releasing the negative, and then you're pulling in the positive. Now, the karate chop one is a really good one when you're like in a meeting and need to be a little discreet, because you can be, here, let me stand up and pretend I'm sitting at a table, but under the table, I could be doing this and not even saying the things out loud, but like thinking in my head, oh, my boss is so frustrating. They never listen to anybody. They always think they're right. And, and you're just tapping away underneath the table and nobody knows, you can be discreet about it. So it's a great way to let go of those negatives and then bring in the positives, because everyone has good things and bad things about them. All of us do. So those are the first 2 techniques. You guys ready for the last one? Okay, this last one, and I will share my screen in a minute, but the last one, well, okay, you can use those for other people, for other situations. You can use them for yourself, but this last one really is to forgive yourself. I know that most people, including me, say things to myself, think things in my head about myself that I would never judge other people that harshly. I would never say things to other people that I say to myself. And yet we do that. We beat ourselves up. So this last technique is really for you to forgive yourself. So let me share my screen again. And again, if you have it, there we are, share screen. You can also be following along if you've printed this out or have it. But this is a meditation. And I love this meditation. I believe it comes from Brooke Snow, but I learned it from someone else. But I think that that's where they got it. So this meditation, you begin by placing your hands on your heart. You close your eyes and you repeat out loud 4 or 5 minutes. I love and accept you. And then you put your name in. So for me, I love and accept you, Heather. Now, you guys, some people have a really hard time saying this, especially at the beginning. They almost can't say their own name. And is it because it's in third person, or is it because they are having a hard time loving and accepting themselves? I think that's the bigger issue. So when you do this, it can feel like it's really repetitive. So I have some techniques under there, some little tips to help the 5 minutes go a little bit faster. And again, you can set a timer on your phone to do this. So I like to mix the words up or to emphasize different words. So instead of saying, I love you and accept you, Heather, I love you and accept you, Heather, then I might change it and split it up to two sentences. I love you, Heather. I accept you, Heather. Then I might put my name at the beginning. Heather, I love you and accept you. Then I might decide to emphasize the word love. I love you and accept you, Heather. Then I might want to say the word you both times, emphasize that one. I love you and accept you, Heather. I might need to emphasize my own name. I love you and accept you, Heather. But you guys can see there's no right or wrong way. It's just saying those words, emphasizing different things so that it can, different words have different, it will stand out. And then another friend likes to think of different parts of our body. And I think especially as women, we can be super critical of our bodies. And why do we compare? We do. I was just doing it recently. And I feel like most of the time I have a pretty positive body image. But I can tell you this last week, not so much. I was being critical of my body. And so another friend, when she does it, she has her hands on her heart, starts that way. But then she'll go through different parts of her body. She'll touch her eyes while she's saying it. She'll touch her nose. She'll touch her throat or her ears or her stomach or her thighs. And she's saying, I love and accept you with her name as she says this. And again, 5 minutes, guys, it seems like a really long time. But the thing that's so amazing, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, is that as I did this meditation, the first probably week and a half, it was a little weird. I'll just admit it felt uncomfortable. It didn't, and you're kind of going, is this even mattering? Is this changing anything? But it does. And now when I do that, I feel so much love. Not within like 15 seconds, it just happens. But it used to take a little bit longer and it took time repeating it every day. But as I say that now, I really feel God's love for me, Christ's love for me, just really, oh, it's just such a good feeling, guys. I feel like everybody needs that feeling. And so, as we are forgiving ourselves, despite our humanness, despite thinking we should have known better, despite whatever, despite losing our temper at our kids, despite making a bad financial decision, whatever it is, as we forgive ourselves and love and accept ourselves, we can have inner peace. And it's something that I actually realized just recently. And it's a slow process, but I've been working on forgiveness for at least 20 years. I remember meeting with a church leader many years ago during my first marriage, and he was asking me questions. And I said, I was reading a book about forgiveness. And he kind of was like, You're reading a book about forgiveness? And I was like, Yeah. And he's like, You're not the one in the wrong. We had some marital issues going on. And I was like, No, I'm reading it for me because I don't want to be carrying around this pain and this grief. And, I wanted the healing for me. And I can say now, after over 20 years of working on this, and it's a continual thing, it's obviously new things pop up all the time, but I really do have inner peace in my heart. And I really don't get triggered that much. I do still get triggered, but not as much. And as you have that in your heart, oh my gosh, life is just so much better. Suddenly people are nicer, the world is nicer. You just all of a sudden you live in a different place because you are in a different place. And so I know that forgiveness is possible. I know that these techniques really can move it from a head space into a heart space. And the thing that I love, just to go back to about Christ, is that he's already paid the price, whether it's for my mistakes or it's the mistakes for people that have hurt me. He's paid the price, but he also believes that we have agency. And if we want to load up our backpacks with grudges and heavy burdens, and we just want to lug that heavy backpack all over for the rest of our years, he will let us because he believes in agency. But as we choose to let go, we can let go of these burdens. We can let go of these griefs. We can let go of these sorrows and these mistakes. And he has already paid the price, and we can have a much brighter, happier life when we forgive ourselves, forgive others. And so I just want you to know that there is a lightness, there is a freedom, and there is a happiness that absolutely comes with forgiving. And so that is it today. Do you guys have any questions before I wrap up about any of the techniques or just any comments? I'm seeing some nodding heads. I'm seeing some people that are like, yep. Um, any questions though? Oh, I'm seeing something in the comments. Oh, okay. When I did this the first time, oh, yes. Okay. So someone is saying, and I'll just keep it private if you're not in the group, they could not say that I love and accept you with their name. And so she recorded the meditation with her voice and just had to listen to it. She couldn't say it. That is a great idea. And thank you for sharing that idea to listen to it if you can't say it. That's a good one. Anyone else want to share a comment or ask a question?
I can just say it works. If the more you work on it, the more you do. So with anything, and I think the biggest key is forgiving ourselves, which
Yeah.
is the hardest. It is very hard to forgive ourselves. But change happens with each step. And it's okay if you do not know if your step is just take a step. Doesn't matter if it's in the right or wrong direction. By taking that action and that step, you will feel where you're going. So sometimes we get so much into our own things, we can't even take the first step to start to change. And so one step, doesn't matter what direction,
Yeah.
you see where it is and then go from there. It's the action part of that.
Yeah.
So
And you can use any of these techniques to forgive yourself. You could do the tapping, like I'm so mad at myself, I release, I release that I'm so mad at myself that I forgot to pay this bill and now I have a late fee and it's going to affect my credit, or whatever it is. You could do that. I'm sure there's some people that have never made that mistake, but I have more than once made a mistake and paid a bill late. So then you tap in, I am still smart. I am good with money. You're bringing in the positive, even if you've made whatever the mistake is. Any of those techniques works for yourself or for others. So it's wonderful. And like Cherie said, just try something and it creates that momentum. And just like when you're driving, it's easier to turn when you're moving than like trying to crank the wheel from a standstill. Just do something and you can pivot. That's much easier than starting from a standstill. So really good. Well, wonderful. If anyone else has something, go ahead and either come off mute or put it in the comments and then I will wrap up. Lita, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for this subject. It's really a subject that concerns everybody about forgiveness. It's very important. And as you mentioned, forgiveness of ourselves, because we are the worst critic of ourselves. So we should first forgive ourselves and then forgive whoever, just for ourselves again, to help ourselves with this forgiveness, because it affects our inner peace, as you mentioned. It is very important. And I really loved your session today. And thank you very much for inviting me as well. It was really good. Thank you very much.
Oh, so glad to have you, Lita, and thank you for your comments. You're right. You can tell when people have not forgiven themselves, they are so critical of others. And so when you meet someone who's super critical, give them some grace, because that means that they are beating themselves up so badly, because it's just what happens when you've forgiven yourself. You can give grace to other people so much better. But when you are so hurting inside, it just makes you critical of everyone. So
that's true.
Yeah, starting with yourself is absolutely the best place to start. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lita. Any other comments from anyone else? You're welcome to come off mute.
So yeah, I wanted to just say, I've tried the tapping before, and when I started it, I was, of course, skeptical. But it actually really does help me. I use it in a little bit different way too, because it helps me with my pain, because I have chronic pain. And so if I sit there and I acknowledge my pain by tapping gently on it to say I feel the pain by actually like touching it, it actually helps me find that peace. So I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I had not thought about using it for chronic pain, but what a great idea. That is really smart. Yeah, and you know what? When I taught this at church, so of course, we had comments from people, and they said, because I told them I'm like, this is kind of woo-woo, because here we are at church. But people said, you know what? Whether it's woo-woo not, first, if it works, great. So even if it's like the placebo effect, if it's working, that's fabulous. But someone else talked about how movement can be so good to release things, and so even doing these small movements, if that's what's helping move the energy through you, that's fabulous. Let's not question it. And I realized as I going through, I was just talking and I didn't tell you guys my story about tapping. So let me wrap up with my story. Several weeks ago, I actually got kicked out of a Facebook group. Right. When I shared that at church, some people had just the right reaction, like, and I was like, I know, right? But what happened is I had in this group asked a question and I did it in the form of a poll. And after about a day and a half, I was like, oh, I wonder if people have like shared what they think. And so I went and I could not find the group. Could not find the group. Then I went and I found that the admin had unfriended me. And I've been completely blocked from the group. So I don't know now if maybe I broke a rule, but I can't find the group to even check it out. But of course, when I went back to check, it was right before bed, guys. So do you think I just blissfully went to sleep? No. And usually I actually sleep really well. By the time I go to bed, I usually can fall asleep in just a few minutes. But instead, I laid this way and I'm thinking about it. And then I'm laying this way and I'm thinking like, do they not like me? What, like all these voices in my head. And finally, laying there in bed, I had to do the stopping. Like, even though I got kicked out of the group, I'm still looking for, I had to do all these things. And then I was able to fall asleep. And so whatever it was, it finally like turned my brain off so I could go to sleep. And so if you are having a hard time falling asleep, that might be a good idea. Whatever things are going through your head that you're worrying about, try tapping them out before you go to bed. And it might be just what you need so you can go to sleep. So yeah, anyway, I forgot to share that story. But yeah, it really did help and it really does work. And I know it works for other things, but that was one that was a recent experience for me. So anyway, well, thank you all for your comments. Thank you for joining today. I want to remind you about the Choosing Wisdom Book Club. This month, we are doing how to have confidence and power in dealing with people. And it's next week. It's next Tuesday. It's in the evening, which I know like for Lena, that's like in the middle of the, she's probably sleeping, all these time zones. We can't get a time zone for everyone. And this book, this is a very old copy. And so if you go and buy one, you will most likely have a different cover. This book is from, I think it was written in, 1956. So it's an oldie but a goodie. And as Cherie and I were talking about it recently, I said, it's not anything you ever, that you haven't heard before. And she goes, no, it's everything you've heard before, all in this book. And it's just so good about how to deal with people and human relations. And it really, a big part of it is like building other people up. And as you build other people up, they think you are just the best. So highly recommend this book. I will be sure to send out invitations to all of you so that you can join us on Zoom next Tuesday evening as we discuss it. It is just a great book, and we love our Choosing Wisdom book club, and it's fun to have a gathering of women that Sorry, we have men are certainly allowed. It's usually mostly women. We've had a few men join us a few times, but it's usually women. But everyone's welcome because these are subjects that are good for everyone. And one of our members has done it with her husband. And I love that because the book we were reading was one that was really about relationships. And I thought, oh, that's so smart to be both reading that book and both improving so you can improve your marriage. Like, it just makes so much sense. But this one is just relationships in general, from kids to spouses to work relationships to neighbors. It's just anyone that you deal with, the person in the grocery store who's checking you out. It works with everyone. So hope to see you guys next week. Thank you so much. And reach out if you have questions, and I will be in touch about our March Wealth and Wisdom topics soon. Take care. Bye-bye.